Hello. The strength of a nation lies in its youth. And for this press conference, we thought we'd hear the voice of the youth by inviting a number of people from our community to ask questions of our politicians. So I'd like to welcome you all to this. If we can start off with Emma, you wanted to ask me some questions.
My first question is, will the schools expect pupils to progress at the same rate at home as they would in school?
I think it's impossible to replicate what happens at schools because part of it is educational, but part of it is also social and growing as a person. So no, we wouldn't expect it to be exactly the same. It can't be. However, what we're trying to do is by using distance learning, by using online learning, is to try to keep you up to speed so that whatever terrible things are happening on the Isle of Man at the moment, they don't derail your education, that you're allowed to keep up and then catch up, so that this won't stop you fulfilling your future and your future potential.
My second question is, what strategies do they have to help children adjust back into formal education?
Yeah, we don't know how long this is going to go on for. And whilst most people can deal with it for a week or two, I think you're quite right that after that, you will need some time to reintegrate. It's going to be a very different world when we get back to schools. What we've been trying to do in the education department is to help those people who are struggling at the moment. But as we start reopening the schools, we're going to need to do some work to get everyone back together, because it's not just you affected, it's your parents, it's also the teachers as well, who are in a very strange world of not being able to come into the classes. So we're going to have to put that effort in, going to have to give you some time to readjust back to a new normality. Thank you very much, Emma. I've got the next person on my list is Ben.
My first question is, whenever we do go back to school, will there be special measures in place like social distancing and deep cleaning?
Yeah, I think that the reality has been yes, there's going to have to be. As I said, we don't know how long this is going to be going on for, but we also know that your education, your well-being, and the well-being of the staff in the schools is our key priority. When we start reopening the schools, we're going to have to do it very carefully, looking at the safety being the most important aspect of this. So we're going to have to devise how to keep people slightly separate, reduce that risk, certainly deep cleaning, but also perhaps having staggered lunch times, staggered classes, staggered times where you go outside in the playground. It's going to feel quite strange until we can make sure it's as safe as possible to go back to normality. But we will get there. We will get back to normal. But I'd ask you to bear with us while we try to make it as safe as possible when we do get to the point of reopening the schools for all those pupils. As you're probably aware, at the moment, people are going into school, the children of key workers or vulnerable children who really need to be looked after at school. But as we gradually loosen some of the restrictions over the coming weeks and months, we're going to need to be taking more of you back into school to keep up to date with your education. Did you have another question, Ben?
Yeah, my second question is, what are the chances of us being able to meet up with friends in the summer as usual?
Again, what we're looking at is very much the situation in Nobles Hospital and also the number of cases we've got going around the island. I'm hopeful that in the coming weeks we can start trying to relax some of the restrictions we've got at the moment, but we need to look after those vulnerable people. We know that the coronavirus is a bit of a strange virus. It doesn't seem to have the same effect on people of your age as perhaps your grandparents' age. So anything we do in terms of coming together, we still need to protect them and make sure they're not at risk because of what we do. The next person on my list is Cara.
Hi. I'd first like to ask about mental health. It's evident that due to the coronavirus pandemic, there's a lot more people struggling with mental health issues or struggling more than they might do usually. In light of this, is the Isle of Man government planning on putting more support in place, such as online resources on the government website? Or I know in New Zealand they've got a 24-hour free call and text service in which you can speak to a trained counsellor.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're quite right that at a time we're worried about people's physical health and we're doing all the right things to try to preserve that, we also need to look after our own mental health and the people around us, because the stresses we're feeling, our parents will be feeling, our grandparents will be feeling, our neighbours will be feeling. But particularly in terms of young people's health, I think it is a major issue. And there are lots of threats to it in terms of bullying, in terms of social media, in terms of people's self-image. And when people are isolated, that can amplify that. What I have seen, though, is over the last couple of weeks, a huge amount of online resources there, a huge amount of guidance there. And I think people are interacting with each other in a much more mature and more helpful way than perhaps previously. But you're quite right, in terms of the Isle of Man government, there is work that's already going on to try to help promote well-being, promote positive mental health. So, for instance, there are online resources. There's the Couth website, which deals particularly with anxiety and depression. There's the listening service, which has continued even though the youth clubs have closed down. And we will be expanding on that, both giving advice to parents but also teachers in terms of how we can keep our mental health up. Because there's such a good close interaction between your mental health and your physical health. We have to deal with both of those. Do you have another question, Cara?
Is this something that do you think might continue once the schools reopen for people who still may not be able to go into school, whether that be for physical or mental health reasons?
Yes, unfortunately, we don't know whether this virus is going to become the new norm, whether it's going to stay in our community, and whether it's going to be a constant risk for those people who, either due to their age or predisposing conditions, might be at risk. So there will be some people, some of your classmates, who perhaps can't come back to school in the same way, and we're going to have to try to deal with that and make sure that they're looked after, not just educationally but also socially, that we find new ways of trying to connect those to the school communities. And I think this is going to be very important as we go through the summer and then into the end of this year. I'm hoping that with the advent of perhaps a vaccine or treatments for this, we can get round it and get back to a sense of normal. But we also need to be very careful with those people who are vulnerable to this virus. The next person on my list is Ethan.
Yeah, hi. My first question is, I'm in year 12, so we missed a lot of content for our courses because of the school closures, and even though we've got online overall grades at the end of next year because of the school closures.
Okay, sorry, Ethan, could you repeat that for me, please?
Well, we missed a lot of content from our courses due to the school closures. What consideration will be given to us in terms of our exams and our overall grades at the end of next year?
Yeah, the Department of Education, both here and in the United Kingdom, have been working really quite closely with the exam boards, because we have to take this into account. We have to have a level playing field in terms of exam grades. So what's going to be happening in terms of that is that we'll be looking at your past performance, your predicted grades, and trying to make sure that you get the awards that you deserve. But there will be some people who still want to sit their exams, and we're working with the exam boards to try to allow that later on in the year if possible, so that those people can actually prove their real potential.
And my second question is, for students with a practical hands-on aspect to their courses, such as A-level product design, which makes up 50% of their overall grade, what will be done to help those students make up for that crucial time lost for that coursework that can't be done at home?
Yeah, I mean, there are quite a few people with either practical skills that need assessing, or, for instance, some of the BTEC students at the University College Isle of Man who need that hands-on assessment, as it were, rather than something more written down. What we're going to be doing is working with the exam boards, but also working with the schools, so that if we do have to open them up earlier during the summer so people can catch up and do those practical assessments, they can, so that they can actually finish their courses. Because what we don't want is for people to have to resit a year, for people's education and their life chances to be derailed with this. So we'll be doing as much as possible with some of the teachers to make sure that everyone gets a chance to catch up and move forward. I think the next person on my list was Greya.
Could you catch COVID-19 from your takeaway food or your Easter eggs?
Ooh, there's a good one. No. COVID-19 is what's called a coronavirus, corona being crown. So they're funny viruses that latch onto things. And we know that when they get into the human body, they latch onto the throat and the nose, which is why they're spread through coughing and sneezing. But we also know that when they're outside the human body, they don't tend to last that long. And particularly on metal surfaces or paper surfaces, they probably only last for a couple of hours or a couple of days at most. That's why washing your hands and basic hygiene is so important. So from things like Easter eggs, as long as they're taken out of the wrapper and kept in a nice cool place with the windows open, no, you're not going to have a risk of that. It's not carried in food either. And one of the things we do know about the virus is you can easily kill it with either bleach or some of the alcohol hand cleansers we use. So no, we don't have to worry about food, and certainly don't have to worry about Easter eggs during this time.
Will people in Year 6 get any chance to go and visit their new high school before September?
What we're trying to do is make sure that your future isn't jeopardised by this very difficult time for all of us. Now, as I said, I'm not quite sure when we'll be able to reopen the schools, but we're hoping to deal with that transition period to make sure that those children who are moving up to secondary school get the chance to have that experience, get the chance to have that induction, get a chance to get used to their new school and their new friendship groups. So we will be working with your teachers and trying to make as sure as possible that you get that experience and get that chance before you move up to secondary school. Okay.
Thank you.
The next person on my list is James.
Hi.
Hello, James.
My first question is, can you get the coronavirus more than once?
This is a new virus. Now, we've dealt with coronaviruses before. They normally cause the common cold, but we haven't dealt with this particular one called COVID-19. We know that most people who get it, the vast majority, particularly younger people, don't get a severe illness and maybe not even have any symptoms at all. And we know that some people then develop an immunity to it. What we don't know is how strong that immunity is or how long that lasts. But there are scientists all over the world trying to do research in this now to make sure that we know exactly who's protected, and also working on a vaccine so that that immunity could be given to other people without them having to be exposed to the virus.
My second question is, are we going straight back to school when the COVID-19 is gone, or will we get some time to adjust?
I think we're going to have to do this in a very gradual stage. As we relax some of the restrictions that have been put upon you, we need to do those one by one and make sure that that doesn't have any unintended consequences like more people getting sick. So we're going to have to deal with it from a safety point of view, but we're also going to have to deal with that with you going into a school where perhaps your desks will be further apart, where you won't be mixing with your friends in the same way, where you may not be able to go and hug them or punch them or do stuff like that, where you'll have to be a little bit physically distant. So we will need to be doing a lot of work for you to help you and your teachers and your parents adjust to this new world. And you're very welcome. And the last person on my list is Harry.
Hi. When restrictions start to ease, is there a plan to stagger schools starting back, as in reducing class sizes for a short period, or just primary schools going back first, like they have in Denmark?
Yeah. I think as we relax the restrictions in terms of people's employment, people going back to work, those key workers going back, we're going to have to do the same with the schools very, very gradually, working with your teachers, working with the other people who are really important in your schools, the support workers, the SENs, the catering staff, the janitors, the cleaners, the caretakers, to gradually get things back to normal. So it will be a stepwise approach. And what we'll be trying to concentrate on is those people who have got exams coming up, or those people who need to transition to secondary school, and dealing with them first. So that may take a while to get completely back to a sense of normality.
And I understand that information has been given out about the possibility of sitting the GCSE exam if we don't get the exam grades we desire.
Yeah.
Could you perhaps explain this, how this would work?
What we've had as a suggestion from the exam boards at the moment is both for GCSEs and probably A-levels that we'll try to give you what you deserve through predicted grades and coursework. But if that's not enough, if that isn't enough for you, or you want to try to do better, we will be trying to make sure that people can sit exams later on in the year. And sort of November was mooted as perhaps a time when people could resit exams. Okay. Now, obviously, what we'll need to do is work with the teachers, work with your coursework, and work to try to get you to that stage if that's what you want to do. And it will be very much a matter of choice, because what we want to do is make sure that everyone gets a chance to show their own potential, but isn't under too much stress at a time when you're going through so many other stresses and so many other changes at the moment. Okay. Now, does anyone else want to ask any extra questions? Ethan.
Yeah. Because of the school closures, a lot of the year 12s haven't been able to visit any universities, get an idea of what it's like and what life will be like when they go to university. What steps are going to be put in place to help us new year 13s as we look towards university?
Yeah, and I'm really sorry about that, because some of the careers fairs have all had to be put on hold, as you say, the visits have. What I'm looking really at is the universities setting up sort of virtual tours so people can have a look around the campuses in a virtual way to give you an idea what's going on. What we also might end up doing is getting people who are at that universities at the moment to run forums for you to explain what it's like. And hopefully when we can, if possible over the summer when the border restrictions are relaxed, we can get you over there to actually have a look around physically. But there are a lot of work being carried out by the universities to do sort of virtual tours of the universities, and I think rather than just see the buildings, talking to some of the students who are there at the moment is really important. So if you do have any friends who are at university at the moment who've obviously can't come back, have a chat to them now about their own experience, because that first-hand knowledge can be really, really useful. Cara, I think you had a question as well.
Yes, the island has so many incredible local musicians, young bands and DJs. I think there's a great culture for going to see live music over here. How does the government plan on reintroducing social gatherings like these?
Yeah, and it was a real shame that we had to close down the Villa Gaiety, that we didn't have the guilds this year. We didn't have the Manx youth games, a huge number of sporting events, but also cultural events. One of the things we've been talking with the Arts Council about is, as we manage to loosen some of the restrictions, having, hopefully if the weather's good, open air concerts, being able to physically distance people but allow them to enjoy that culture, how we can encourage more people to go online, because there's been some fantastic collaborations going online using Zoom and other platforms, but also how we can do it physically, how we could employ buskers to be on the streets, how we could get small bands together in public places to keep alive very much a Celtic core that we have on the island, and make sure that those people who can't go to Shenniger's Dew, can't go to the Cruniac, can still perform on the island and still have that recognition. And I think, James, you wanted to ask a question.
Is social distancing only going to stop when we have found a cure to this virus?
Yeah, do you know what? I don't know. I think we will get over this. And again, social distancing is a horrible term, because socially we need to stay together. Physically we need to be a little bit apart so we don't spread the virus, particularly to those who are vulnerable. I think for the foreseeable future, so certainly over the summer, we're going to have to take precautions to protect ourselves and our loved ones. But I hope that once we get a vaccine for this disease, once we can control it properly, then we can start relaxing the control that we've got to put on ourselves. But certainly I think for the foreseeable future, for the next couple of weeks and months, that social distancing has been shown to be one of the major ways we can reduce the spread of this virus through our island. And so I think we're going to have to carry on with that. Were there any other questions?
Yeah, I have one more.
Okay.
Have you managed to save any money with lots of places being shut, like schools? If so, how do you plan on spending the money saved?
Okay, so I think your question was, because we've saved money because the schools have been shut, what are we going to do with it? A lot of that money is all to do with about staffing, and obviously they've carried on working, whether it's from home or in a different way. But certainly some of the money, as Cara was talking about, some of the money that hasn't been invested in some of the festivals and some of the shows that we were going to put on, we're going to put into different ways of actually keeping cultural events and educational events going. So I think we can get that balance. We can use it in a more imaginative way and make sure that you're provided with both the education and cultural experiences that you need and that you deserve. Ben, I think you had a question.
How well are we doing at dealing with the coronavirus on the Isle of Man?
I think we're doing as well as we can. Very sadly, people have got sick, and very sadly, people have passed away due to this. What I have been so humbled by is the way people have stepped up, the way people like yourselves have looked after each other. And I think if we can carry on doing this, that sense of community, that sense of togetherness, we will get through this. One of the aspects is that hospitals can do so a certain amount in terms of keeping people well who are sick and trying to get them through this. But the real way we're going to beat this virus is as a community coming together and trying to fight it by stopping it spreading. And so I think in that respect we're doing incredibly well, and that's down to people like yourselves and your families. Emma, I think you wanted to ask a question.
Do you think that this will affect the school curriculum, especially primary schools? For example, will the focus shift to more practical and play-based learning?
I think in the short term, yes. I think we need to have that transition period to get you back to school, to build up your confidence. I mean, this has shaken everyone to the core. This has changed our lives. And I think we need to have a bit of time to get back, and play and music are really good therapies for trying to break down that fear and break down that anxiety and trying to build up that confidence that it's safe to go back to school, that it's safe to play with your friends again, and it's safe to see your family. So thank you very much for your question, Emma. Were there any other questions? Okay. Well, can I just say thank you so much to all of you. It's a bit of a strange situation that we're having an interview through video and through the internet, but genuinely thank you so much for taking part in this and bringing a different dimension to some of these press conferences that we do, because I think you've got a very, very valid point and your voice should be heard. So all I'd like to say is thank you very much for taking part today. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll meet again soon in person. Thank you.
We're working hard behind the scenes
to provide community services for our island.
From supplying everyday essentials
to maintaining access to important services.
We are teaching the children of the key workers and delivering childcare.
We're keeping the Isle of Man's essential services going.
We've all got a part to play.
Went into
the island running.
So you can play your part. Stay at home and keep our community safe.
People's lives don't stop.
And neither do we.
Which is why we're providing our community
with what it needs when it needs it.
For you, for our community and our island.
For you, for our community, for all our island.
Hospice care for you, for our community and for our island.
For you, for our community and for our island.
For you, for our community, for our island.